I'm Father Jeffrey MICKLER of the Society of St. Paul, a religious congregation in the Catholic Church made up of brothers and priests who specialize in spreading the gospel through the use of media. Today, I would like to share with you some thoughts on St. Paul, our patron, in the last years of his life. What he was like as a senior citizen, we would say today. First of all, we have to realize in the ancient world, lifespan was drastically less than it is today. The average lifespan was about 35 years old due to a very, very high infant mortality rate. Also, diseases for which there were no cures. Now, if you were healthy, like Cicero, and had quite a bit of wealth, you could live to 80 years old. But if you were the average person, trying to struggle through life with all of its labors, the muck and the mire, the chances of you reaching 40, 45, or 50 were rather slim. Now, St. Paul traditionally was born around the year 8, and he died a martyr around the year 64. So he died perhaps at age 56, 57, 58, depending on when he was born. But he was older than his years by contemporary standards. That's for certain. He suffered physically a great deal throughout his life. We could see a reminder of this in his second letter to the Corinthians, where he reminds them of all the things that he had been through. 5 times I received 40 lashes less 1 from the Jews. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. A day and a night I spent out on the deep. Now, all of these assaults on his body had to take its toll. My life has been rather tranquil. I sprained my ankle 2 times while playing basketball, once in high school, once in college, and every now and then that ankle will ache as the weather changes. I hurt my knees doing long-distance running, and I tend to bow rather than genuflect because of that. Hurt my shoulder while practicing other sports. And I feel those little aches and pains, the injuries that happened long ago. But I have no idea what it would be like to have received 39 lashes 3 times. And the toll that would take on the body over the years. Or to be beaten by rods. How much that had to hurt at the time of the affliction. And how, as the decades rolled by, he would feel those blows over and over again as his body aged. The time he was stoned, they left him for dead, so it had to be quite severe. Each one of those blows by rocks would no doubt come back to haunt him decades later. But this did not slow Paul down spiritually. He constantly wanted to improve himself and to spread the gospel. He didn't whine over his aches and pains. They were there. He took them as a part of his ministry. Remember in the Acts of the Apostles, when he was baptized by Ananias, the Lord revealed to Ananias, right at the beginning of Paul's ministry, how much Paul would have to suffer for the gospel. And he would see in his own suffering a union with the suffering of Christ crucified, and in many ways complementing and making up for whatever was lacking in the sufferings of the Lord himself. And because of that, he didn't take his physical sufferings as something unfair, something unjust. He saw them as part and parcel of his calling and the Lord to build up the body of Christ on earth. And that body he wanted to see be vigorous and strong in all aspects. So Paul, as he aged, no doubt had those physical problems haunting him and physical pains. And he would pray constantly that a thorn in the flesh, whatever that might be, could be removed from him. But the Lord would say, "You have my grace, you have my grace," and that should be enough for you. He suffered eye problems. Evidently, when he stopped at Galatia, the Galatians were so merciful towards him that he writes in his letter that if possible they would have plucked out their own eyes and given them to Paul. That's how loving and caring they were. So he knew the aches and pains that we mortals have, and he had more than his share. At the same time, he didn't feel bitter about it or dwell on those occasions, saying, "Woe is me." All of us, as the decades roll by, can keep a careful accounting of all the times our loved ones let us down, all the times our employers betrayed us, all the times that our employees cheated us. All of those things we could store up in our hearts, and as we age, we could become more and more bitter. That wasn't the case with Paul at all. In his letter to 2 Timothy, he writes this famous line, "As for me, my life is already being poured out like a libation. The time of my departure is imminent. I've fought the good fight. I've finished the race. I've kept the faith. From here on, the crown of righteousness is being laid aside for me, which the Lord, the just judge, will award me on that day. Not only me, but on all those who have longed for his appearance." So there was no real bitterness there. Any judgment of his enemies would be left in the hands of God. He was at peace. And as we enter the last years or the last decades or even the last days of our life, we should say to ourselves, we've done what the Lord has asked us. We could be at peace. Now, he was human, and you'll see in the next verses from 2 Timothy, the final stages of the letter where he said, when I went to trial, no one showed up and took my part. Other people have betrayed me. I feel alone. I only have Luke with me. By the way, send along my old cloak and my old books. I could use them. He still wanted to read and grow in his knowledge of God and neighbor. And he wanted to winter one more time, so he needed something warm to clothe him. But he didn't allow that abandonment of people to destroy his faith or his peace. When we feel lonely because our family hardly ever comes to visit us, and our friends infrequently come to see us, we could think of St. Paul in the last days of his life, facing trial with only a very few friends around him. He didn't become bitter or despair, but he continued to trust in the Lord of love, who was always with him. And that Lord is always with you. So we can feel lonely, but we are never really alone as believers. May you be a blessing to others, and may you receive many blessings in your life as you continue to love and serve the Lord.